This week on the Men at the Movies podcast, we fire all of our rockets, use all of our bullets and flares in part 2 of this conversation about Top Gun Maverick. We all have a look that communicates when we are entering territory where we are risking something great, but the outcome is up in the air. How do we handle it when our greatest fears come true? Will we keep fighting or eject when we run out of options? Thankfully, we have a savior arrive at the last minute who redeems those situations. One who says, that's what my dad would have done. So let's discover God's truth in this movie.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being.
Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and in just a minute, we're going to pick up part 2 of the conversation Andreas and I had revolving around Top Gun Maverick. Now, as we enter into the deeper discussions of the battles and the fear that we face, the language does get a little spicy, so maybe don't listen with the kids in the car, or maybe just say earmuffs a few times. But we do have a lot of laughs. We wrestle with some really deep, surprising emotions, and hopefully encourage you guys. I'm really thankful for Andreas for stepping in, sharing his wisdom and insight in his story, both what you get to hear on the podcast, as well as the conversations we get to have away from the mic as well. This has been one of my favorite episodes that I've done, and that's really saying something. So I don't want to keep you guys from it anymore, so let's get to it. Previously, we talked about it's not the plane, it's the pilot.
Yep.
And that was like point 1 of 4. 4 ideas, 4 themes, 4 recurring moments, quotes, whatever. And so we're not going to revisit it's not the plane, it's the pilot. This idea of the look on your face deals with 2 people, Hondo and Penny. Now, Andreas, being the Top Gun aficionado that you are, for noobs like me, who are like, oh, like, cool, this girl owns a bar and her name's Penny and he knows her and they used to have a thing. But she's actually referenced in the original Top Gun movie.
Twice. Yeah. So the first time that he, the very beginning of the first Top Gun, he gets back with Cougar.
Not that she is a cougar.
Not that she's a cougar. Him and Cougar are flying. Cougar gets missile lock. It messes him up mentally. They come back. Maverick's getting chewed out for leaving his wingman. And the air boss is laying it in.
Leaving your wingman. That's original.
Yeah. By the way, you know what? I'm just going to go off on a quick tangent.
Yeah.
Not that it matters.
That's what we do.
That works for me. During that exercise, there was one with Hangman and Phoenix.
Yeah.
Are going up against Maverick.
Yeah.
And at one point,
Poor Bob.
right? Oh, Bob is awesome.
Yeah.
So at one point, Hangman leaves Phoenix.
Right.
And Maverick says, leaving your wingman? That's original. That's a throwback to the original movie.
Right.
The reason why it's a throwback is because in the original movie, what happens? It's him and Cougar, right? Cougar's going after the guy. Cougar loses him in the sun. And the MiG comes around back and gets missile lock on him.
From behind.
In the second movie, he's fighting Payback and Hangman. He goes over, gets a quick kill with Phoenix. Gets a quick kill with Phoenix, and then he goes after Hangman. What does he do with Hangman? Hangman, who abandoned his wingman.
Yeah.
He takes him. They point up into the sun.
Right.
He says, "I can't see him.
Where is he? Phoenix?
Where is he?
Talk to me."
And she's like, "I'm dead."
I'm dead, dickhead.
Talking about this. And what does Maverick do? Maverick learned from the first movie that you can lose people in the sun. And so there's this like really poetic kind of him using elements of the first movie. And what does he do? He points him into the sun. He causes him to go blind, comes around behind him, gets the kill, right?
Yeah.
Same thing that caused Cougar to get shot down when he abandoned his wingman is same thing that caused Hangman to get shot down when they were doing the war games.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so beautifully done. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this totally pulls from the first movie in a really fun way. Anyways, having said that, I have no
And
idea
why
what you
does
asked
he
me.
hangman? Because he hangs his teammates out to dry.
That's right. Well, I think that's how they set him up. I think he's a lot nicer than
Yeah.
that.
He's one of my favorite characters.
I love him. I think he's fantastic.
I think he is the best pilot
Yes.
for sure.
Yeah.
He is Mav.
He is Mav. Yeah. But you have to have him be Iceman though, right?
Right.
He plays kind of the Iceman role in this. So going back to the original question, I'm sorry, was the time when it says, I don't like the look on your face. So the first time that it says it.
No. Penny. Where does Penny come from?
Penny Benjamin. Oh, we did a tangent within a tangent.
Yeah.
This is like Inception. This is amazing. Okay. So Penny Benjamin, at the very beginning, he's getting chewed out by the air boss, and the air boss is, listing off all the things that he did wrong. And one admiral's daughter, right? And then Goose
looks at him.
Goose looks at him and says, Penny Benjamin. and that's like, oh, okay. So Maverick likes to hang out with hot women. All right, we get it. Then later in that movie, in the first movie, Meg Ryan, Goose's wife, shows up and they're hanging out, and she's like, oh, and one admiral's daughter. And he's like, what? She's like, he tells me everything. And so they actually allude to Penny twice in the first movie as this girl that he's kind of gone around with and he's had experience with, but now he's hanging out with Charlie and it's fun. And so when he arrives at that bar in the second movie and he's like, he sees Penny, it's like, oh my gosh, she's here.
Yeah.
Like, this is the girl. And the way that they structured is that, they've dated on and off for the past 30 years, 40 years.
We know how it ends. Let's not start.
Yep.
Because it's like you said, it's routine. This is what happens.
Same thing. Yeah. So she sees him and, talks about the look on his face.
Don't give me that look, Mav.
Don't give me that look.
But look. But the interesting thing, says there's two people that talk about the look on his face. Hondo, 2 times. One is as he's getting ready to go off on the Dark Star.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that look on your face, Mav.
Yep.
And then he's getting ready to go off the aircraft carrier. I don't like that look on your face.
Yep.
And both times he responds the same way. It's the only one I got.
It's the only one I got. Yeah.
Penny,
mm-hmm.
Don't give me that look.
Yep.
Twice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he responds the same way. What look?
Yeah.
Just like every man will respond to his wife. What look? What tone of voice? What are you talking about?
Yeah. So for me, the idea of the look is the look is when Maverick is about to enter into something that he has no control over, where he can no longer contain the situation. I think there's a lot of situations that he finds himself in where he can show up and he knows that he has what it takes and he can perform what he has to do and he can come out on top. And it takes nothing outside of himself in order to be successful. However, I think as human beings, what we find is that doesn't happen all the time, right? We constantly find ourselves in situations where we don't know how things are going to end up.
We think we have a lot more control over the situation than we actually do.
Right. And so when you look at this, the 2 times that he's with Hondo and Hondo's like, I don't like that look on your face, right? Arguably, Maverick doesn't come back with the plane that he left in, right?
Right. That is a great point. Yeah, this plane you're putting me in, Hondo, it's not coming back. We'll see if I do.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how it is, right? And then the I don't like that look on your face is a variant of that. And it's when he's entering into a moment where he has history with this woman. They know that they have it in them to hit it off. She obviously has been married. She's had a kid. She's divorced. He's out in Hawaii with his new wife. I'm sure her and Maverick dated before. She met her husband and probably even after, right? On and off over the course of 30, 40 years, whatever it's been. And so, when she's like, I don't like that look on your face. And he's like, that's kind of like hey, we're about to enter into something that you have no control over, right? And we don't know how this is going to end up. We don't know what the ending's going to look like. And then the second time that she says that is, first of all, she says the first time when they meet, right? When they first reconnect.
You were going to ask me what time I get off and 2 a.m. And he's like, what? Don't give me that look.
Exactly. And then the second time,
because the interesting thing, she says, don't give me that look.
Mm-hmm.
Hondo says, I don't like that look.
Yeah. Right. What a difference that makes. It's so subtle.
She's saying, no, you can't bring that bullshit in here. Right? Which is what our wives do.
Right.
I mean, we know our wives.
Yep.
And they will call us out.
Yep. They will.
It's like, don't give me that look.
Yeah.
And whatever, when we got married, and this was back in 2010, and we were at a wedding. We got married on June 21st, which is the longest day of the year. It's the summer solstice.
Oh, yeah.
We intentionally picked this day. It was like a Monday, because who gets married on a Monday at 5 p.m. in June?
Paul McDonald
in Charlotte. We actually rented out an island in one of the nature preserves. We got married on Copperhead Island.
Seriously?
They had a big picnic shelter. They had tents. We spent the night in a tent. Again, I would say don't do this.
Wow. What a honeymoon.
Because, boards, tent, butts.
Yeah.
And and again, super hot.
June 21st.
I didn't get a lot of sleep in not a good way.
Oh.
Just because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so hot. It's so uncomfortable. So there was a picnic shelter. We had, a DJ, we had caterers, and we had a cake. And, there's a joke. I have a lot of friends that are like, oh, no. When you have the cake, you're supposed to smash it in their face. And so there's a picture where I did not, but I thought really hard about it.
Oh, wow.
But when you say, don't give me that look, that look is on that face in that picture of, I am seriously considering smashing this cake in your face.
There's a very clear line. Don't cross this.
At our reception.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Oh, I want to do it, though. No, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Just a little further. Just a little further.
Right. Oh, man, that's so good, because what does Mav do in those other situations? He pushes past Mach 10 because he doesn't have that limiter. Don't give me that look is different than I don't like that look.
Yep.
And that's what we need. We need sort of that governor.
Yeah.
Not to like a governor. I don't like that phrase as like a political ruler, but the somebody to slow our engine down, because we will go all in on some crazy stuff. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And my wife has said, I don't like telling you no. I don't want you to resent me. I don't like this. But it's like, I actually need it sometimes because I need you to say, I don't like that look. Yeah. Don't go down that path. Yep. And I was like, no. I need you to do that. And I don't resent you. I appreciate it, because I come up with crazy harebrained ideas. Yeah. And sometimes I need to say, if she says, oh, that's a good idea, let's go with it, I'm like, woohoo, let's go. And if she says, let's sleep on this for a month. I don't like that look, Mav. Right. Helps me say, okay, all right. It's a check that I feel is very God-led. And if you're married, if you have a partner, and you say, I feel like God's calling me here. And I think we see this in the goodbye scene that you love. We are called to something. But if our partner is not along for the ride, they're not aligned, then that should be somewhat of a check for us to say, maybe I shouldn't go down this path. I think you're dead on, right? Maverick starts out talking to the students and says, here's your NATOPS. This is your manual. This is everything that you need to know in order for you to fly your plane effectively and efficiently. But when we're getting married, there's a lot of books that you can read, but there ain't no NATOPS that's specific to your relationship, right? Like, you got to learn about love languages and gifts and sleeping habits and studies. And like there's all kinds of things you have to do for your marriage. It's not quite as clean and clear. And so I think as men, we do the best that we can, and we try to engage in relationships, and we try to, we do our best to accommodate our wives. I love my wife. I try to bring her on everything I do. But it's difficult. It's a difficult situation. The look on your face. What we said is there's a very real possibility of crashing.
Yeah, you're not going to come back from this.
Whether that's blowing up the Dark Star,
Mhm.
taking the missile for Rooster,
Mhm.
because those are things that he actually, in a certain sense, brought on himself. Maverick made a choice to push Dark Star past Mach 10.
Yeah.
He made a choice to fly over Rooster,
Mhm.
which is a freaking awesome scene.
It was fantastic. And
I
they shot
love
it
that.
beautifully. It was so good.
It was so good. So many. So I told my friend Will, who's a filmmaker, I'm like, dude, you are ruining me for movies because I'm looking at how did they shoot this? Why did they color it this way? Like there's so much of these golden warm shots and colorization of this movie.
Oh, yeah. And the lens that they use, like the bokeh is beautiful and just
Right.
melting
Oh my
background.
gosh,
It's gorgeous.
It's incredible.
I love it.
We love this movie.
We do.
But then when you shift to Penny, Maverick has very little control
Yeah, very little.
of the outcome. Like she's like, nope, we know how this is going to end, so let's not start it.
And what does he say? He says, "You look good."
You look good.
And she rings that bell.
Yeah.
Sorry. keep going.
Exactly. It's like rules are rules. Rules are rules. Got to respect the lady. No cell phones on the bar. Great rule, by the way. If you're out on a date with your wife or potential wife, that phone better be in your pocket on silence or maybe in the car.
Yep.
You don't need your phone. Give her your presents.
It's not why you're there. Yeah.
That one's for free.
Yep. There you go.
That one's not in our notes. So, but this idea that, again, going back to even in what we talked about in part 1, we think we control a lot more than we actually do.
Mhm.
When we talk about not just our relationship with our wives, but our kids.
Yeah, that's big.
I had a conversation with a buddy of mine. He's got young kids.
Yeah.
5 to like 8. I mean, you've got young kids, Andreas. The idea that like we think we can control our kids to keep bad things from happening, prevent bad things from coming into the house. But we can't. Like in a certain sense, we don't have the ability to keep our kids from running out in the street and getting run over.
Yep.
I mean, I talked with a buddy of mine this morning. He's like, yep, my kid's a runner. He's 5. He's like, there's not a fence all the way around the kindergarten playground.
Oh, man.
My kid's a runner.
Yeah.
He's going to find that gap and run through it.
Mm-hmm.
And we have very little control. So what do we do when life, and the question is, what do we do when the worst thing that we can imagine happens? What do we do when your daughter calls you after her high school graduation and tells you she's pregnant? Or your kids decide not to go to church anymore? Or you get a phone call saying your kid died in a car wreck? Because there is we get to understand there's very little we can control in this life. I don't like that look, Mav. And that look is entering into unknown territory where we could crash and burn.
Yeah.
In this life, you will have troubles. What look did Jesus have on his face that night in the Garden of Gethsemane?
Wow, that's a headcanon considering what we just said. My goodness. Yeah.
Like, I don't like that look, man. I mean, wasn't that basically what Peter said? I don't like that look, Jesus.
Yeah.
Get behind me, Satan. Or it was probably like Hondo. It's the only look I got.
It's the only one
I
got.
know what I'm going into.
Mm-hmm.
I know I might not come home from this, but it's worth it.
It is worth it, right? And he says, if I don't come back, I thank you. And then Hondo responds, it's been an honor.
Right.
Right. Like if that eventuality does come to take place, I'm not going to like it. I'm not going to appreciate it. In fact, I'm probably going to be sad. But this time right now, this season that we've had together, that we've gotten to do these activities, dare I say the word exploits, right? Have these missions that have been successful, that have been crazy. Like, I'm honored. I'm honored that I got to play a part in this story right now at this time in history. Paul, there's only one of you. And after you, there's not going to be another one. And before you, there won't be There's
Right.
never been one, right? So you occupy this beautiful space in history where right now is the only time that the kingdom of God will be moved as a result of you being here. And I think that plays into our walk, right? Is they're having this moment where like, you know what, this season might be over. This might be the end. Like we might have done everything that we could do. And after this, I have to go find another pilot to follow around, right? I don't know why.
My wife was like, what is he doing there? I was like, it's just a thing. Hondo's like his right-hand man. It's just what happens. Just go with it. Don't ask too many questions. Feel like, why is Hondo there? I don't know. He just is. And he's a great character. I love him.
I love his character. He's like the voice of the normal person who's like, what is happening right now? Yeah. But I think that happens, right? Is we find ourselves in seasons, and a lot of times we don't want to let seasons go. And my wife and I are currently, in the process of a transitionary season where we're transitioning out of one thing, we're transitioning into another thing. And as we do that, it's hard to let go, right?
Yeah.
And being able to say, hey, it's been an honor and move on is a very challenging thing. And oftentimes I'll find myself in a season where I don't want to let go. I don't want to move on. And God's calling me into something new, something I haven't experienced, something that I have no control over, something that's a new challenge. But yeah, it's hard to move on from season to season to season, right? And being able to let go and gracefully move on, knowing that you're giving your absolute best right now is a very challenging thing. And I'm glad that the movie kind of alludes to it.
Because this is such a father movie. And again, going back to that idea of that scene with Iceman and Maverick that we've talked about on the YouTube channel. So go check that out, because it's time to let go. For me as a parent, my youngest is now 16. And you've mentioned that transition. What does the future look like? What does it look like to parent a son who's going out drinking and is part of a fraternity and doesn't live with you? What does it mean to be a father to a daughter who has a 2-year-old or a son who has a 4-year-old? What does it mean to father a almost 30-year-old son? My son is now 28. So what does it mean to father an adult child? Because, and I was talking to Andrew even today, it's like he's 16. He's playing on the football team. We left the house at 5 p.m. to go grab dinner, go to his football game, pick him up after the game, come back home. We get home after 11. 6 hours invested. What does it mean to be a father when that's no longer the requirement? Your boys are all homeschooled. What happens when they're at college and your role as father changes from controlling everything they do, manipulating? Yeah, I mean, how old's your youngest?
6 to 16.
Yeah, 6 to 16. So that's a wide range. So what are you going to do when that youngest moves on? What does it mean to be father?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? It alludes back to the whole, I don't like that look on your face, right? You're about to enter into something that's a new territory, it's a new season, and how do you gracefully make that transition? And maybe gracefully isn't a requirement, right? Maybe it's how do you effectively make that transition? How do you find yourself in a place where you and your needs can be met, while at the same time meeting the needs of your kids, while at the same time you being a godly and quality influence in their lives to help guide them and direct them without creating estrangements along the way, because it's really easy to get so involved that your kids are like, okay, I just want to do my own thing, go away.
Right. I don't want to go to church anymore. I don't want to tithe my paycheck. I told my youngest, I was like, you're getting to the age now where you get to choose. Yeah. My parents are coming into town. You decide whether or not you work. You are getting to decide whether or not you join me at church. Again, the idea, I don't like that look on your face.
I don't like the look on your face.
Because we don't know the outcome.
Mm-mm.
When my son, who's now 19, went to college, I couldn't speak because I was emotional. His last morning at home,
he was leaving. He was going to his mom's. He was doing his final pack ups. And I said, this means we're good. The grief means that we're good. If I'm, see you later, peace out. I don't know why it's that thick Southern accent. But the grief means it's good. The face means it matters.
That's strong.
I don't like that look on your face. This means what I'm about to do matters.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like I felt super bad because I was like, I couldn't say anything when my son left. It's like I couldn't say I love you. I couldn't say anything because I was so choked up. Like that morning, I was laying in bed and my wife's like, are you crying? It's like, this is the last morning Brendan's waking up here. This is the last morning. This is home. So yeah, I'm crying, but that means it matters. The look means it matters. The look means there's something at play. There's something at stake. There's something at risk. So how do we respond to that? How do we engage in that? Because there's a very real possibility of crashing.
There is, yeah.
Whether relationally with Penny or literally with the aircraft that Hondo's buckling me into.
Yeah. So for me, this movie, there were three parts of this movie that overwhelmed me emotionally. And the first time was the scene, you got to let go, right? Yeah. Which is the hard part about being human, is allowing other people to have the sentience and the freedom to make their own life and to make their own decisions. And as a parent, I do that. And I think it's something that my wife and I really focus on as parents. But there's other places that it hits you too. So the year I moved to Charlotte from Tulsa, Oklahoma, I had some close friends, and Isaiah took his life.
Yeah.
The year that I moved to Charlotte. So I wasn't in Oklahoma. I left town, and then one of the best friends I've ever had took his own life. And he took his own life on May 27th, which happens to be the opening day for Top Gun. And so I walk into this theater, right? And Daniel, my other friend, he and I both kind of took it pretty hard. And we called, and his response to that scene was the exact same as mine, which is that we had this battle that we fought. We had a soldier that we were fighting with. I left that battle to move on to fight other battles in North Carolina instead of Oklahoma. But one of my soldiers was still engaged. One of my friends, one of my brothers in combat was still engaged. And not only did he lose the battle, he also lost the war when he used the gun on himself. And even though in the same way that Goose died when Maverick was flying, and you couldn't have prevented it, you couldn't have saved it. But at the same point in time, your hand was also on the stick when it happened, right? Maverick's hand was on the stick, guiding the plane when the flat spin took place, which prevented the canopy from opening up, which Goose ejected, hit the canopy, and died, right? And that's what killed him. And I feel the same way, right? Like for the last 7 years, I've carried around this piece where it's like,
If you hadn't moved to Charlotte.
if I hadn't moved, I'd still be there. And if I was there, I'd still be engaging with him routinely and frequently.
Jeez.
And I didn't. I wasn't there. Like, I could have been. My hand was on the stick. I could have not moved.
Right.
Right? I could have chosen to stay there. I moved to Charlotte. I was employed, but I didn't have a full-time job. So I moved here hoping that they would give me a job once I got here. So,
Right.
like, my wife and I flew out here. We found a place to live. Like, we put out a deposit. We moved us and our kids out here, and it happened to work out. Like, thank
Right.
goodness. And then my friend shot himself, and I've carried that with me. And so when I saw that moment where he's like, hey, you got to let go,
It's time to let go.
I was like, oh man, this is a burden that I've been carrying. Right.
And you didn't even know it.
I didn't even know it. Well,
Right.
I mean, I kind of knew it. every year Memorial Day, this dickhead. Okay, I'm telling you, like my friend, when he shot himself, he knew exactly what he was doing, because every Memorial Day is now tainted because that's the weekend that he died, right?
What a
So
dick.
every Memorial Day I'm going to think of him, but it's not necessarily the remembrance, it's more of the burden, right? And so I've been carrying the burden around with me. And so this year is the 7th year. So at the conclusion of these 7 years, I go and I see Top Gun, and Val Kilmer is typing on the screen, "You got to let go." And you're letting go of your accountability for other people's actions, decisions, paths, purposes, walks, right? I couldn't control what he did. I don't own what he did. I had a potential possibility to influence what he did, but that's beta risk, right? It's not alpha risk. And so you can't, it's what you could have done, but you didn't do. So it's really hard to quantify that and measure what the risk is. And so like me reflecting on my relationship with Isaiah, for me, it was like, wow, it is time to let go. I've carried this with me for a long time. I walked out of the theater, talked to my buddy. Daniel and I both lost something, right? And we both kind of saw this movie and had this theme of, hey, it's time to let go. It's okay. It's time to move on. We have other battles for you to fight. There's other purpose in your life. We're going to send you out on another mission. You've held on to this. The war's already been decided. You lost a battle. We got more for you to do. Get after it. And so for me, I had this huge kind of weight lifted off, and it was a really nice, powerful moment for me to kind of sit there and reflect on what the last 7 years has meant. The second and the third time that I got overwhelmed in this movie are exactly around that. So the first time was, you got to let go. Cool. All right. Yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. Right. So at what point in the movie does Maverick actually let go? What do you think? I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to tell you what I think.
Wow, that's a really good question, dude.
Okay, so here's my answer.
Hang on.
Okay.
I'm trying to I'm putting a lot of thought into this.
Okay, take your time.
When he chose Rooster to be his wingman, because he knew Hangman was the better pilot. He was more capable. He had the abilities. Like, Hangman could do it.
Mm-hmm.
But he knew the ramifications. He knew what mattered most was Rooster.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew the damage it would do to Rooster's heart. So he's like, I will take him with me, even though it puts him in harm's way. Even though he wasn't really letting go, because, all right, go ahead. Because I know I can see the look on your face that that's leading into what you say is the moment he really let go.
Yeah. So I don't think that's when that's
when he thought he let go.
Yeah, exactly. Maverick has a journey of letting go, and the journey is many steps.
Right.
And
by the way, just like us.
Yeah. Just like life. And I don't think that he lets go until he actually says the phrase, "Sorry, Goose."
And when does he say that?
Well, let me go ahead and actually tell you a little story. This is all spoilers. Okay. So Maverick comes into this movie.
Because the previous 4 hours has not been spoilers, but now we're really getting into spoilers.
I'm just saying, I'm going to dive into some content here. So Maverick has this thing, right, where he's a top performer. He's the best of the best. There ain't nobody like him. He's shot down. Just wants an expectation.
Just manage expectations.
So he's one of the best pilots that's flying, right? He's got 3 confirmed kills against MiGs in an F-14.
Only active pilot.
Well, there's Hangman has 1 confirmed kill against.
Only active pilot with that many.
Yes, right. Super solid. He's the guy. And he's always been an exceptional pilot. And it's not what he does, it's who he is, right?
It's not the plane, it's the pilot.
And so this is completely a part of his identity. So much so that I love this scene, the moment where they're like talking about grounding him, and they're like, I have everything I need to throw you out of the Navy, but I need to, choose, do I throw you out of the Navy, or do I give my men a fighting chance? And Maverick is such a tryhard. He's like, really? Can I go? Right? And Warlock's
like, you need to know what's rhetorical.
That's a rhetorical question, my guy. You need to take a step back. Like, it's already going your way. But Maverick is so excited. He's such a tryhard.
Pick me.
Right? And Maverick has no game. Like, just to be clear, like, his ability to navigate people sucks. Right? What did he say to Penny? He's like, you look good. Come on, that's your
You
line.
look good.
Like the percentage of dudes that can pull off that line,
Right.
pretty minimal, right?
She works at a bar. She's heard it multiple times a night.
What are you doing? And then like, hey, you just don't, no more touching this hard deck. And he's like, well, here's a proposal to change a hard deck. Like his ability to like navigate people sucks, right? So this point where it's like, hey, I'm gonna let you do this thing. He's like, oh, good, cool, right? So he chooses Rooster, and at this point, he's like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna give Rooster a shot to prove to himself that he has what it takes, because his whole life he's been fighting against Maverick. Maverick pulled my papers. Maverick is low. Maverick is terrible. Maverick has ruined my career. He set me back, right? Maverick now has to fight to recreate this relationship, right? Maverick is not a father, but he holds Rooster as his son, right? Especially because he was there when his father died. So Maverick has ownership, right? He has ownership of Goose isn't here to have this relationship. And so I owe it to Goose to stand in to be this man's father. And so I'm trying to do what I can to protect him by keeping him safe. And so I'm going to pull his papers because that's what his mom wanted.
Right.
And I'm going to do what I can to train him and keep him safe and to make sure that he comes home. Right.
I was trying to be the father he lost.
I was trying to be the father he lost. So this happens. And Maverick's greatest fear at this point is Rooster not coming home. That's the fear.
Losing Rooster.
Not losing Rooster. Rooster not coming home. Because he can lose Rooster. Like Rooster can be like, screw you, I'm out of here. I don't want to be a part of you. He's lost Rooster. But if Rooster doesn't come home, he doesn't even have the option of potentially pursuing a relationship in the future, right? So his
But even
whole thing,
before his decision, like going into Maverick's decision of who's on the team,
yes,
his biggest concern was losing Rooster. If he selected Hangman to be his wingman,
then Rooster would have been shielded from
he
that.
loses Rooster.
Right. So he's
Emotionally.
right. So his greatest fear is Rooster needs to come home. And
Yeah.
his best case scenario is I can have a relationship with Rooster and we can begin to move forward.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the spectrum that they're working within. So they go out on the mission and they have the SAMs being launched. Maverick does his little Cobra maneuver thing. He comes up and takes a missile for Rooster. He gets shot down. At that point, as you
Great
kind of talked
scene.
about before,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, my debt's paid. I'm clear. He can go home. He can live his life. It's
I
been a
paid
trade.
my debt to Goose.
I've paid my debt to Goose. Life is good. I can go forward. Oh, maybe I'll be a POW, whatever, right? And then he gets on the ground. He's doing his thing. Rooster makes the decision to go back to try to save him. And so he goes back. There's a helicopter, there's an attack helicopter, some Soviet model that's going after him. Can't remember what it is. Rooster shows up, launches a missile, shoots him down. Sam sees him, shoots Rooster down. Rooster's going down. And you can see the look on Maverick's face is like, again, the look on his face, right?
And then the Tom Cruise sprint happens.
The top. It's like a karate chop in the air while he's running through the snow. Every movie has the Tom
By the
Cruise
way,
sprint.
if you've ever even walked through the snow, you realize just how insane that scene is.
Yeah.
Like, no, that doesn't happen. And he's like, yeah, exactly. Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise running through the snow, chopping it.
You know what, though? I think there's something to be said, though, for people who are athletes who are running in movies. Like, Tom Cruise runs like an athlete because he's an athlete. I don't know if you've ever seen, like, Jason Bourne. What's his name? Matt Damon. When Matt Damon runs, it looks so awkward. I'm like, you are not an athlete, dude. Like, go do some laps or something. You know, because there's like a certain, like, sprint. Like, there's
a stop. Yeah, right.
there's like a lightness to your feet.
You learn how to run.
Yeah.
Like, the biggest thing, like, I've seen even my kids when they play sports. Like I used to tease my son when he'd play because he'd run, but his wrists, like his elbows would stay in, but his wrists would flop side to side.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, no, you've got to like keep everything tight, compact. Everything moves in one direction. And yeah, that's what Tom Cruise does as he runs to Rooster.
I'm sure he had a coach.
Right. You think?
Yeah, right. So they go on this mission, right? He gets shot down, Rooster gets shot down.
By the way, what is Maverick's biggest fear going into this last mission? That Rooster gets shot down.
Yes.
Remember what we talked about? That idea of control.
Mm-hmm.
What's the biggest thing we're afraid of? For me, it was my daughter telling me she was pregnant. So guess what? I get to hear she's pregnant. The phone call What is the thing that you would hate most? And what are you going to do when that happens? Rooster gets shot down. That's the one thing Mav didn't want to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mav is sitting there and he's like, okay, Rooster got shot down. I took a missile for this guy, right? And when you take a missile in a plane, you're not expecting to live through it. But somehow he did, right? So he lives through the missile, and Rooster then got shot down. His greatest fear is kind of happening, right? It's manifesting. And then he's like, all right, well, let's go see if we can find some way to get out of here. They trot through the snow. And then after they trot through the snow, they get to this airfield that had just been bombed.
Right.
They find an old F-14. How fortuitous.
And we talked about this. From this moment on, Rooster becomes Goose. Like you said, 100%. From this moment on, from the moment they meet in the woods.
What the hell?
What are you doing here?
What am I doing
You
here?
think I took that missile so you could be down here with me? You should be back on the carrier by now.
I saved your life.
I saved your life. That's the whole point. What the hell were you even thinking?
You told me not to think.
Oh, that's right. But from that moment on, every facial expression, every movement that Rooster makes looks like Goose.
It's amazing. It is so powerful and so masterfully done. And when it happened, I was I was getting chills in the theater when this happened. So they get on the plane, right? They get in the plane. He hops in the back. And
I don't know. Your dad dealt with all that stuff.
Well, which do I hit? I don't know. You figure it out. You have UHF 2. Well, there's 300. Which one do I touch? I don't know. You figure it out, right? And so, him and Rooster managed to get the plane going. So the engines start. Rooster pulls the pins on the missiles. They get into the plane.
Which, by the way, Mav doesn't escape unless Rooster's with him.
Right.
I'm just saying, God redeems what we think is the worst thing that could possibly happen.
Yeah.
That's it. Carry on.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my little nugget. Little dive bombed in there.
Yeah. So he's got a few missiles. He's got some rounds in the gun. They take off, right? And they take off. They lose their front landing gear as they're taking off. But there's freedom, right? There's open skies on the horizon. They're excited. Okay, cool. I am able to save my best friend's, my Rio's son, and I'm able to take him back. And even though I thought that I failed, I have another chance.
Yeah.
I have another chance to save him. I have another chance at redemption. And so they start flying, and Rooster looks over his shoulder.
I can pay my debt to Goose.
Exactly. And so Rooster looks over his shoulder, tally 2, right? He sees the 2 Su-57s. It's the plane. You're looking at me like it's an unnamed plane. It's the plane.
It's fine.
It's
fine.
The plane.
No, I'm loving that scene.
And so
do some of that pilot shit, Mav.
Oh my gosh, so good, right? And so that on that scene, Rooster is saying the exact same stuff that Goose said when Goose was in the plane.
Right.
So let's see some of that pilot shit. He's coming around, like all that kind of stuff. Same inflection, same tone.
Everything.
Masterfully done. Like
so
masterfully
good.
done.
Like he's an echo of Goose.
Oh, so good. So they get up in the air, right? And then I love it because Maverick actually turns into the narrator during that scene. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but he's like kind of talking about what the situation is. So then he's like, oh, what's going on? It's like, okay, well, bad things are about to happen. If they knew who we were, we'd already be dead.
Right.
Okay, we're outmatched. We're outgunned. And then Rooster says this thing to him that is the same type of thing that you would expect Goose to say when he's hyping up his pilot, right? And he says, an F-14 against 2 5th-gen fighters? And to circle back, he says, it's not the plane.
It's the pilot.
It's the pilot. Right?
You do this if I wasn't here.
You do this if I wasn't here. He says, yeah, but you are. I have everything that I need to have that's been baked into me, into my DNA, into my training, into my Sunday school lessons, into my interactions with other men, my interactions professionally. I have everything that I need in order to do what has to be done. And I can do it successfully and I can make it out of here. But I'm going to choose not to do it because the risk is too great. Because the calamity that could happen is more than I'm set to
More
accept.
than I can bear.
It's more than I can bear. And so what are we going to do instead?
I don't
Hey.
like that look, Mav.
Hey, well, here's what you're going to do. Look above you. You see those handles? Yeah, those are the injection handles. I want you to pull those. Maverick would rather eject behind enemy lines and still fight another day than risk going head to head with these two planes and losing not just his life, but more importantly, the life of the one
Yeah,
that
he
couldn't
didn't care
save
about
before.
his.
Yeah, not at all.
He cared about Rooster.
100%. And so now he's faced with this moment. And this is why I don't think that he let him go, right? Because if he let him go, he would have gone after him. So what happens is he says, okay, it's not the pilot, or it's not the plane, it's the pilot. You'd go after him if I wasn't here.
Yeah.
And then Maverick gets a look on his face.
He's got that look.
He's got a look. And they don't say it out loud. But what's cool is that for one of the few times in the movie, you can actually see someone with this big helmet on them and this big face mask on. You see his expression change.
Right.
Even though he has all that crap on, you can't see his face. So his face starts to change. And immediately you start to see him turn into the genius pilot that you saw in the first movie. I see some real genius in your flying, but I can't say that in there, right? When Charlie's talking to him about what he's doing. So what does he do? Everything that he's learned, every skill, every maneuver, every experience culminates in this one fight. And what does he do? He does genius stuff, right? That no one else expects. We're all over here playing
Do some of that pilot shit, man.
seriously, and we're over here playing checkers. He's playing chess. So the first thing that he does, he has one plane moving to weapons
When
envelope
he
behind him.
has everything to lose.
He has everything to lose, and he doesn't want to.
Right. Everything.
Everything.
The very real possibility of crashing and burning and losing what he cares most about, and that's Rooster.
Yeah. So here we are. The stage is set. The risks have been identified. The odds have been weighed, right? And we know what's at stake. And so what does he do? He does some genius level stuff. The first thing that he does is he pulls right. He uses his guns, takes out one of the planes.
Yeah.
That plane starts going down. He yells back to Rooster and says, "Let me know when you see smoke in the sky," which means when the other plane has fired a missile. Rooster says, "Smoke in the air, smoke in the air." And what does he do? He pulls this maneuver where he uses the other plane's missile to blow up that other plane that he already started to shoot down.
That's some Goliath level stuff right there.
It's like, what in the what? Like,
I used his sword to cut off his head.
Yeah.
When I just had a stone.
Oh my gosh. Right?
Right.
Genius level stuff. So that's going on. And then they go head to head in the air, right? So he pulls a maneuver. He gets behind this guy. He goes through.
But he knows his enemy. I'm going low to confuse his tracking system.
Yes.
You've got to know your enemy.
Yes. Although before that happens, Rooster lets out an F-bomb.
Right. So in PG-13 movies, you are allowed one F word to keep it PG-13. So when you're watching a PG-13, keep an eye out because the writers, the producers, the directors, they say, where is this bullet best used? And Andreas and I believe that the bullet they use when they shoot a missile at this fifth generation fighter, and he does some weird stuff like hovering in the air, spinning around.
He puts himself into a flat spin going horizontally, which makes no bloody sense. You're like, what in the crap was that? That should not work.
Which is Rooster saying, what the fuck?
What the fuck was that? Right? And everybody else in the theater went like, yep.
Perfect. Like, again, surgical use of their one bullet for that word.
Right. And what it does is when that happens, it exacerbates the whole, we're going up against fifth gen fighters. We are
overmatched.
We have no business winning this fight.
Yeah.
Now he's already taken out one, but what does he need to do? He needs to level the playing field. So after that missile goes by him and this dude's doing a flat spin going horizontally, and because he's in an F-14 with its wings swept back so he can go fast.
Yeah.
He says, all right, we got to get low to confuse his targeting system. All right, cool. Thanks for the narration, Mav. Appreciate that. Go ahead and head down and we'll see what happens next. And so they head down. And I think there's a couple missiles. Mav eventually does his Cobra thing
turns into guns.
Right. So he exhausts all of his missiles. He goes to guns. He does his Cobra thing. He gets behind the guy. After he gets behind the guy, he goes through all of his missiles, and then he switches to guns. He goes through all of his rounds, except for he has 33, and he says, "All right, I've got one last chance to shoot this guy down." And all of his experience, all of his skill, everything that he's been to has culminated to this point, and those 33 rounds are effectively used to strike down the enemy that would prevent him from allowing Rooster to live life.
Right, accomplishing his mission, which is bring Rooster home.
Bring Rooster home.
That's all really Mav cared about.
Yeah.
Bring Rooster home.
Right. So at this moment, the second plane goes down, right?
It's not the end?
That's not the end.
Oh.
That's not the end. You would think it's the end because you're like, oh my gosh, thank goodness we made it. We
win!
survived. We won. Maverick is good. That's not what happens. What happens is they start to fly out to sea and they see missile lock. Where's it coming from? They can't figure it out. Oh, the guy's on the nose.
Between them and home.
Between them and home is one last one that they didn't see. Except for this time, he's out of missiles. He's out of flares. He's out of bullets. He has nothing left to use on either offense or defense. Su-57 goes Mach 3.5. Way better turning range. Everything about it is superior.
He's already turned. He's on us already. Like,
exactly. Top speed for F-14 is like 2.3, 2.4, Mach 2.3, Mach 2.4. And that's with like the
this
wings
isn't even a
back.
4th gen fighter. This is a 3rd gen. This is an old.
It's like late 3rd gen, early 4th gen.
As John Hamm says.
Yeah.
Apparently, we aren't the only ones holding onto our relics.
Yeah, exactly. So here's where Maverick finds himself. Is he finds himself, okay, I can't outrun this guy. I've used everything that I know how to use. And for me, this speaks to me because I feel like as a man, I find myself in places where I've used every trick that I know how to use. I've used every tool that I know how to use. I've used every relationship to try to pull something off. And I've exhausted everything that I have. So 6 months ago, find myself and I'm at work and I have done everything that I know how to do to be successful. I have pulled all the fancy words out. I've made all the cool PowerPoint decks. I've had all the strategic conversations.
Sent all the right emails.
I sent all the right emails. I've done everything that I know how to do to be successful. And I am still at a place where I've won battle after battle after battle, but then I find myself and I'm losing the war because I am completely drained. I am completely empty. And the only thing that I have left is just an ejection handle.
But yeah.
Right. The only thing that I have left is an ejection handle, which is where Mav found himself. Yeah. And so he says, all right, we're out of flares. We're out of guns. We're out of missiles. I'm going to go ahead and pull up. And the reason why he does that is so that way the canopy will peel back and
don't want to replay a goose.
Don't want to replay the goose's death. Right. So he goes into this thing where he starts to pull up. And as he's pulling up, there's missile lock, there's missile lock, there's missile lock. And eventually it goes, right? And the hard part here for Maverick is that even the last part for how do you win this? Okay, we can't make it back to the carrier, but I want you to eject. Because if you can eject, at least I can save your life.
Yeah.
But what's he met with? Well, the ejection handle's busted, right? So now Maverick is in a lose, lose, lose situation,
right? Which
is the opposite of a win-win-win situation where everyone wins.
Which is what we all root for from The Office.
Right.
Win-win-win.
So Maverick is about to lose his own life, and he's about to be responsible, albeit, for the death of Rooster.
He would take responsibility for Rooster's. Yeah.
Yes, he would absolutely take responsibility for Rooster's death. And so now he has his greatest fear coming to pass while he has been completely drained and he's completely empty. And the last thing that he has to say is, I'm sorry, Goose. I've done everything I know how to do. Right. And I reflect back to my buddy, Isaiah, right? You know, when he took his own life, he didn't take it just cause. He was fighting war after war after war. He was being depleted over and over and over and over again. He had done everything that he knew how to do. And he couldn't figure out how to come out on top. And he hit the ejection handle, right? And he didn't come back. That's it. He's done. And so between my experiences that I had and the experiences of my friends and the things that they've lost. Life is hard. You're going to get beat down. You're going to get broken. You're going to lose some battles. And Maverick's greatest fear is coming to pass. He's about to lose his best friend's son in this bizarre poetic way, because Goose was at least able to eject, and that's what killed him. Rooster can't even eject, right?
Wow.
We're going to go down in the plane. And I feel like when you hit that moment, you're out of options. And it's so easy to pull the trigger, to grab the ejection seat, right? But there's more. And I think the reason why this compels me so much is because Hangman shows up and says, "This is your savior speaking." Right?
Looking good.
I am good.
I'm very good.
Very good. In this moment where he says, "Hey, this is your savior speaking." Right? So this SU-57, they're going up. The ejection handle's not being pulled. The thing it actually fires the missile, right? In the thing, you actually see the missile drop down out of the body. And then it explodes in a beautiful way. By the way, the whole way that the plane exploded was freaking rad. I'm compelled by that scene because it's so powerful for us to get to the end of what we know. And then what do we turn to? What do we rely on? Right? Is it your savior speaking? Are you going to hit the ejection handle? Or are you just going to quit and let the missile hit you? Like, how are we as men? How are we as Christians? How are we as fathers to respond when we're out of options? Now, you would like to think it's a lot easier to turn to Jesus a lot sooner, right?
Like we should turn. Exactly.
Hey, you should just pray more. Good call. Yeah. Let's do that, right? And so your Savior shows up, and the Savior eliminates the last threat. Now, from a warfare movie, there's no way that an SU-57 would be surprised by an F-18. So
he saw him coming.
He saw him coming, obviously, but he was chosen to go for something else.
Right.
But it's the moment of, at what point do you turn to your Savior? At what point do you as a man say, what I've tried doesn't work? Maybe you're listening to this and you're a Christian and you're going through something tough, right? Maybe it's the toughest thing that you've gone through. Maybe everything that you've done up until this point isn't going to get you to the next place that you need to go. What got you here won't get you there. Maybe you're at a place where you're having a different response from your kids, from your wife, from your work, like me. Whatever your environment is, whatever the place is that you've been put to have a ministry, you're out of options. The church answer is just turn to Jesus, right?
Just pray.
Just pray.
Read the Bible and pray.
But the reality is, and I think this is one of the things that I love Top Gun Maverick so much, is that it shows this, right? It shows someone being broken and defeated, and then being saved, right? And I just love it. I think it's completely poetic. But there's also people that might be listening to this podcast that haven't traveled that path before, right? And if you're one of those people, and life has been beating you down, and you're out of options, and you don't know where to turn, and you've used every tool in your toolkit, every weapon in your arsenal, every defensive mechanism that you have, and you have stuff that's on the line, and you just don't know what's going to happen. There is an option. You can't predict it. You can't know when it's going to show up. You don't know if it's going to happen. You don't even know that it might be an option, but it is.
Yeah.
And that might be the thing that ends up saving you from the thing that you fear most. And I want to give you that encouragement in case you're one of those people listening.
And that's what makes the last line that resonates with me so powerful. Because they get back to the aircraft carrier, obviously. And you're waiting, because in the first movie, in Top Gun, you can be my wingman anytime. And you're expecting a line like that.
A banter, yeah.
Right. And you're like, man, I hope that's not the line they use. I hope they don't just copy it. And that's what makes this movie great. Is because they don't copy it. You're expecting something. But what they give you is so much more than what you're expecting. And Mav says, thank you for saving my life. And Rooster says, it's what my dad would have done. And that's what Jesus says to us. Because we are lost. We're out of bullets. We're out of flares. We're out of guns. We're out of everything. We're out of options. And we're looking certain disaster in the face. The loss of everything we hold dear. And we get rescued. And Mav thought he was saving Rooster. Right? He's like, I took the bullet. What were you thinking? I took the missile so you'd be safe. But Mav doesn't make it back to the carrier without Rooster. Without his worst fears. Worst fear, Rooster getting shot down. Well, guess what? Rooster gets shot down. But in the movie, God used that to provide a way to get Mav back to the carrier. It's what my dad would have done. It's what Jesus did. He came back to show us the way. You know, in part 1, we talked about the teacher needs to show us it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus' sole purpose of coming back, thank you for saving my life. It's what my dad would have done.
So strong.
And I've seen it so many times. And every time, like even sitting here, it chokes me up. It's what my dad would have done. You're worth it. It means something. And that's why this movie resonates, because you're like, oh man, there's so much there. There's so much stuff. Obviously, you know, all the awesome shots, awesome cinematography, music, sound, themes, all this stuff. But when Jesus comes down, he's like, it's what my dad would have done. Because we think of God as like we mentioned on part 1, you deserve wrath, right? You don't deserve a donut. You deserve wrath. But Jesus says, no, it's what my dad would have done. You can't win this on your own. You can't do it on your own. Husband, father, work, all the things.
Yeah.
Right? We can't. And that's what your friend kind of gave into, this feeling like it is up to him.
Yeah. You know, when we talk about the radical sacrifice, right, that was made by Jesus, and how God views us and how God chooses to engage with us, it's really easy to think, okay, God's this big guy in the clouds and he's got this angels and harps and, you know, basically how he looks in a cartoon, right?
Right.
And, you know, he's got other things that are important, like how does he solve world hunger and whatever's going on in the world, which is, you know, that's what political leaders are supposed to solve. or
world hunger,
yeah.
Oil shortage, whatever.
Sure. That's not what he does, right? He's not looking to save our livelihood. He's looking to save our soul. Stakes are higher. Stakes are different.
He's not looking to set us free from Rome.
No.
He's looking to set us free from sin.
Exactly.
From Satan, from what really enslaves us. It's what my dad would have done.
It's what my dad would have done. Yeah. It's strong, man. We don't have a video going, but if you couldn't tell, Paul just got like majorly choked up trying to get that out. And it was wonderful to watch. Like, Paul is such like a real dude. I dig it.
So I guess we need to cut this short because we're well over an hour.
Again?
The second hour.
Oh, man.
I think we got through at least those 4 points.
Yeah, we got through a few stuff.
We probably could do a part 3 and a part 4, but one, we will save some of this for the YouTube channel because we didn't even talk about Iceman.
Oh, man.
So we're going to do that on our YouTube channel. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Because this was pretty awesome. If you haven't seen this movie and you listen to this for some reason, I'm not sure why, you should absolutely see this. This movie will wreck you. My wife saw it. She's like, I don't understand why you're so emotional. It's like, I just, it is between the scene with Iceman and the scene at the end of It's What My Dad Would Have Done. And if you can, watch the first one.
Yeah.
Watch Top Gun first, because you'll see the echoes of Goose and his son. And honestly, as sons of God, that's what we should do. We should echo the Father. So this has been Paul McDonald and Andreas Werner talking about Top Gun Maverick.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?